Hello everyone, this is Voice of Ethiopia from Ethiopian Satellite Television in Addis Ababa studio. I am Seblewerk. I have with me today Dr. Natnael Asres and Seblewerk Tadese, community organizer from Australia. We will be talking about the health centers being destroyed and what we need to do now. Stay with us. Thank you very much for both of you to give us your time in our studio. I'd like to start with Dr. Natnael. You've been to many places. I've been part of that once. You have seen most of the health centers around Amhara and Afar. The main issue is now most of them have been destroyed, and you're a doctor, you know how important they are for the community, especially for the countryside. So tell us a bit about it, your journey and how it makes you feel.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah. But before I start, I would love to appreciate everything that you and your team is doing and the whole of ESAT, because it's important. Every media has to go out there and show what's out there. Regards to the health facilities, yes, most of them have been ruined, almost all, close to 3,000 to be exact, from health posts to health centers, primary hospitals, general hospitals, and a few specialized hospitals and university hospitals as well. So that has a big impact for the community, for the country, and for the health sector as a whole, because building this health sector has been a major challenge. And as you know, the health sector is very expensive. Yeah. It's one of the most expensive sectors out there. And our country is very dependent on those sectors. It's not like the Europe, not the United States. We don't have a very strong insurance scheme, so everything is for free. So these facilities were built in a system that gives services for free. So that makes the burden even more greater, because there is no remaining funds or money that you could rebuild on, because the facilities were functioning for free, giving services for free for most of the cases. So that's the biggest challenge. In our journey, as you said, we were able to see most of the Amhara region affected by the war, and a few of Afar region as well. The facilities have been completely damaged.
Right. Well, tell us a bit about your NGO. You run an NGO called Global Action and Rebuilding Ethiopia, shortly GABI Ethiopia. So it's voluntary groups that I was with you once when you were traveling to Amhara. It was really interesting to see you guys going there, making your assessment, to trying to help. So tell us about it.
So GABI was founded, is a birth of the war. So sometimes war is good because it made us come together. It's mostly comprised of medical doctors and health professionals, but apart from that, we have a few other professionals as well, because it's very important to have other professionals on board as well. So we have engineers, people in tech that are helping us in different aspects. So GABI means, as you know, the actual GABI, it's a very common thing that we have in Ethiopia, because we wear it when it's cold, we wear it when we're sad. Usually if you go to a funeral of someone's house, you know that someone died from that family if they're wearing a GABI. So that's where the name comes from. So GABI started as just a volunteer group and evolved into an NGO because of the war, and the damage has been very extensive. Now we're working on rebuilding the country, as the name indicates, and we're planning not only during the war, but post-war. There's a lot to do for the next 10, 20 years. So that's the aim of the whole NGO. We have close to 6 projects now that we're running, and most of them are a birth of the war. Right. And don't want to go into a lot of details into them, but one is facility restoration and rebuilding facilities. We have started that. We've been able to rebuild a few health centers so far, one in Tadese, one in Wallo, and we're working with other people to do that, trying to get different entities to come along. So facility restoration is one. 2 is physical rehabilitation. Along the way, I think you have also seen there are a lot of people that have been physically damaged, including the soldiers. So, but we don't have the proper facilities to start off with. No physical rehabilitation centers, no wheelchairs, no crutches. So that's the basic things we're trying to provide. And as I said, we have people in tech and engineers that are working with us. So we're trying to advance it to a point where we can make 3D printed like prosthetics for people. Okay. So imagine giving someone the ability to actually grab something after they lost their hand because of the war. So one is that. Another project we're working on is mental health and psychosocial support. Usually people that go through this kind of events usually have a very traumatic experience. So PTSD will definitely be there, anxiety will definitely be there, depression will definitely be there. So we're trying to, one, establish services, because most of the areas affected by this war don't have that services around. And as a country, our mental health services is very
poor anyway.
Poor, and like you could say close to none. So we're trying to expand that, avail the services, and at least to do it in some areas where people can actually access it and they don't have to come to Addis for it. Another one is we're working on gender-based violence. That has been seen a lot of rape cases around the country. And there is a lot of misinformation, and within the community, they need support. So there are different phases to support someone that has been affected by gender-based violence. One is getting them the immediate medical treatment they need. But apart from that, they also need post-traumatic counseling after they get the medical treatment. And then we need to help them rebuild their lives as well, because it's a huge traumatic event. So most of the time, if you go to facilities, they only focus on the medical aspect because that's their responsibility. So we're trying to avail all three components, and we have been doing that as well. Another one that we're working on is we're actually working on internally displaced people, or the IDPs. So there were a lot in Seblewerk, as you know, but now because most of the country is reopening, the IDPs are decreasing and decreasing, and that's what we wanted. But as long as they're there, they need mental health support, clinical support, and any other support they need. So we're doing that as well. And we also have research and development units. So a R&D unit, so that is developing the prosthetics and other researches as well, and doing the assessments.
Right. Looks like there's great projects here. But are you able to do them all, and do you have the money for it? Or any support?
Not exactly. I honestly believe the idea is what's important. Money will follow the idea. So we have the idea. We've been implementing with the resources we have so far. And we have proven that it can actually work on the ground. So from now on, the resources come, it just go straight into implementation. Right.
You have been getting some supports, right?
Yes, definitely. We have been getting support from different people or groups, organizations that have been working with us. We just rebuilt a facility with a television company. We were able to send food aids to IDPs from a different group of people that came together and just gave us money. So different modalities.
Yes. Well, Sabli, we've been traveling together with you. We've been to Afar, and you did bring some medical supplies as well, which you delivered to Afar. And I think you have some left. We've been traveling to Amhara area, and we've seen Seblewerk Hospital, Tadese, and other places. And how did you feel about them all being destroyed, especially most of them?
Thanks, Mati, for giving me a chance to express my feelings because on those traveling, one thing I felt is like what I was been hearing, and from media and from other people who's been in the place, they just told us a very small part of it. That's what I feel. I haven't actually understand it fully until I see it myself in Tadese, in Seblewerk, and also in Afar and Mile. So the need and also the destruction level. I mean, I was puzzled trying to get up and say why this far. I mean, the rebels come and destroy, not just even to be recover. I think Nati explained most of it, but there is also the documentation, the history of the people who have been patient in that was being destroyed fully. So everything is starting actually from nothing. And in that, it was a shocking moment for me. Moms and one of the doctors was telling us, there's a boy who need oxygen. It was hard to find, but they managed, with the leftover, which the rebels actually couldn't find. It's because it was displaced. It wasn't in their site. Because they recovered that, they saved that boy, young boy, was sitting there. It just, the picture was still in my head. In this, these children didn't involve in anything. And the women's, and I think explained by gender-based violence, and also other kind of war-related problem, but also those everyday problems. So there's nothing left. So it's, it's inciting us that Nati is about the free medical, because in Ethiopia it's true. Because in other parts where
we're poor anyway, we can't afford to pay.
Yeah, in Australia, for example, we are one of the countries who always been affected by the natural disasters. So things happen, but it quickly recover because there is a private sector and the insurance and other system actually just to fill that gap. But one thing I realize in here, everything is just depend on the goodwill of people, but also mostly government. And people can't afford to pay back and to rebuild the system. So the need are huge. And I think it's just a basic human needs to be survive and get help. And if we are human, I think this situation actually calling us to act that based on our humanity and need a lot of, it's beyond government. And we need collective action to rebuild to a basic level.
Yes, well, that's the whole purpose of this discussion today. Well, we've been to many places, but in terms of at Tadese, we've been there actually together, didn't we? The health center and the hospital, both of them been totally destroyed, and they destroyed every machine so that you won't be able to fix it again. And not only that, when we went there the other day, even the mattress had gone. Every little thing they could destroyed it. And I think they did deliver about 4 babies in there, and 2 of them had died. And one of them, with the mother, was a nurse working there. It could be really painful to be able to see that and be affected in the same place that where you serve. Anyway, so the most important part is, like we said, we cannot rebuild it by the government budget. We have to rebuild it by getting lots of support from Ethiopian community and non-Ethiopian community, whoever cares about humanity out there. In Australia, there's a gesture as well, and other places in Europe and America. They need to know what they can help us. So Nati probably will tell us how we can get all this support. I mean, people are interested to support. So how do they do it?
As you said, it's very demanding at the resources that are needed at this point, and the government cannot rebuild the country alone.
Yeah.
So we need to every person that cares about Ethiopia, every person that cares about the health system, needs to be on board to make sure that we go back to where we are, and hopefully the plan is. Me personally, and I think everybody within the health sector thinks we can rebuild the health sector for better.
Yeah, I think
so
we should.
Yeah, and we should. Yeah. So that should be the plan. So the resources we didn't have, because if we all help each other, we can actually make that possible. There are different ways to help, different modalities to help in the rebuilding, financially. Medical equipment, resources-wise, and even expertise can actually be used at this point. And there are different ways to help. The government has made different things available, including the Ministry of Health. So that's one platform to actually make an impact. And there are a group of people like ourselves, like Gab Ethiopia, that's willing to go down there and actually make an impact. And that's also a platform where people can actually help. The one thing I just want to emphasize, where whatever you do, it's not small. Every contribution at this point will matter. Yeah. And as long as we actually avoid duplication of effort, that can actually take us further than we should.
Yeah, but how could you? I mean, how could you do that? I mean, there has been a list on the Ministry of Health, and people have been copying that and trying to bring the same thing. And some people just simply brought stuff, like medical supplies, just thinking, okay, they might need this, but we need to have really clear list of things that we need, and to be able to make sure not to duplicate them as well. So the main things, I think, is most of the facilities, like the big equipment, have been destroyed. The most important part, I think, is that. And do you have anything in mind? Just people can think about it, because they have to buy them in groups as well, because they're huge and expensive.
That's a very good point. The biggest challenge for people, especially the diaspora that has been flocking to the country, is they can only get drugs or medications that are sold over the counter. So for them to get equipment will take time, and as you said, is expensive, so it's easier to buy it in groups. So, but those are the ones that are very important, and importing it to the country has become very easy now, because they're trying to help. As you could say, like when we went to Tadese, we saw they have started to deliver babies, but they don't have an ultrasound to see them well. We went to Borumeda, which is very close to Tadese, but the services in Borumeda, nobody else in the region has it. They have ophthalmology services, but currently they don't have a slit lamp and a microscope to actually proceed with those services. And you can name different hospitals like this, and there are components and machines and medical equipments that they're lacking, which can actually start helping a lot of people if we avail the 1 or 2 equipment at each facility. So rather like buying over-the-counter drugs, I suggest do it in groups. You're trying to help the country, so come in groups, come together.
Right, bring something that can actually last long and can always be used for other
Definitely,
stuff.
Sustainability is key.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you want to say something?
I think one thing is really, I like to share the story. We have been in war victims who lost their family member, and we met some few women who lost their husband, their children.
Yes,
and in one family in Shuarabit, it's a Yellen area, I think. There's 12 family members who are, or everyone is affected. There is people who died in that family, but there is all others been injured, and some young girls who have the bomb blast things in their eyes, and they couldn't really access because there is no Tadese was the closest, and that's not working. And Tadese have to refer in Debre Brahan. You know, when you look at it, these are the post-trauma disorder. I think it's really crucial, you know, to recover and to heal, but still you are in pain. You can't just given, you know, recover from what happened. It's not only psychological, physical, you are in pain because there is no facility. And some people died because it's indirectly, it's, for me, it's like, you know, like children births, some of the maternity hub in Lalibela and in Tadese and other places also destroyed. It's children, the next generation, who don't have any relation with the war. So this destruction actually targeting the next generation to be, you know, affected, not only just those who are adult. So the children actually being indirectly to become not to be born in a way, because you know we have also long-term issues in our hospital, birth-related days, but this actually aggravated more. So it's important to just think, you know, there are victims who are physically, they lost their family, but also they are affected. They injured through that when the rebel came and just ramp up everyone, just killed, and they already, some of them even buried their parents just in front of their door. And the trauma, every day they just have that reminder.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we need to be collaboratively. I think the expertise, our understanding about PTDS is not much because the severity is big. And we need experts in that area. And especially I want to appeal diasporas who are social workers and psychologists, psychiatrists. We need them more than ever. And also to incorporate that with it, because we normally in our culture, we have these churches are doing those. But when, like, for example, Yellen, the whole village, there's more than one person actually being injured and hurt. So it's hard for the locals in a traditional way to fix this problem because it's a very, you know, medical and physical days and also emotional injury. So we need that kind of expertise to come. And another thing, equipment, which I'm seeing in Tadese, for example, in the bed, they just actually destroyed inside the mattress. They destroyed it. They try to fix it and just make people to live. Even the contamination, you know, all that. I think you are better explain that. They use even the branch of the tree, the sticks, to hold the glucose, because there's nothing left because they're breaking it or they've stolen it. So this just when I just want to highlight the people who are listening to this program, whether you are Ethiopian or you are friend of Ethiopia or just simply you care for humanity. I think it's time, and we can actually minimize the injury, the psychological and the physical, those who are suffering because they survive, but they're still suffering. So we need to focus on that, and the equipment is really needed. And I'm very much agreed what he said. There is some expensive equipment which hardly to find directly from the counter. For myself, for example, my experience, I just brought the oxygen and the suction machine for surgery. It was hard to bring it, immobilizing that. But I think it's important having that one oxygen means many people will be using that. So medication is good, but what I'm hearing is there's a lot of people bringing that. Now we need to also focus those basic, necessary, bit expensive equipment need to be for this affected area.
Right. Dr. Natnael, I will add some on this, but I'm glad you mentioned that there's people who came from Atay and Yellen area, and they came in one place because we needed to support them and hear what they have gone through. So in one house, there was 12 of them hiding in there, and a huge bomb or some sort of weapon dropped in there. And 5 of them died instantly. 6 of them, I think, are injured. So out of those, few of them are children. In their eyes, there's stuff in their legs, and they have had lots of damage in their bodies, but they still haven't seen a doctor. Only very recently, after we saw them, we tried to send them to Debre Birhan Hospital. They're fixing it, I hope now. They were working with them, but there are quite a few. And then on the way back, we met another lady on the way. I mean, there's something on her head. You can see it is destroying her eyes. You can see it. It's all blotted and stuff. And there are so many people out there need medical help because of this war. And not only that, the normal day-to-day service that the health center should give have stopped. So we need to somehow explain the urgency and how important to rebuild those facilities. I think. Do you want to add something on it?
Yeah, definitely. It's not only about trauma. It's not only about people affected by the war. It's everyday problems. People every day people used to give birth there. Every day people used to get their medication for their diabetes, hypertension, whatever you want to name it. So essential services have also been completely compromised. So that's even much worse than the people that actually have gotten trauma. Because most of the people that have been involved in trauma or have been injured is the soldiers, and they know how to cope with it. So essential services have been compromised. So a mother doesn't have a place to give birth. And if she does, if her kid is preterm or needs some help, it's not the best place to give birth at this point. So it's the whole service that has been compromised, and we need to look at it at a wholesome approach for us to rebuild it for the better.
Right. I mean, the other thing that we heard was the people who've been affected by, experienced sexual abuse. They haven't come out, most of them. And I mean, in Waldia and a few other places, we try to talk to them so that they get some help, but they weren't happy to take it out, to even talk about it. I mean, it's very sad. At one point, you're affected by it, and you're not able to talk about it. So is there any service that you're doing or you're planning to do?
So usually, not even in this kind of war, but usually people that are affected by gender-based violence, it's because of the trauma, they're not able to talk about it. And the community also has an effect, because if someone knows that you've been affected by that, everybody will point their fingers and say, that's the girl that has been affected. Exactly. That's the biggest challenge. So what we've been trying to do is avail the services, and now we're working on an advocacy for people to come out and seek those services. So usually this kind of services are called one-stop services, where they could get medical service, and also there's law enforcement there. So if they want to pursue charges and stuff like that, that could also be provided. But in this case, you wouldn't do that. But in normal cases, if it's your partner, you're like someone that you know, or something like that. But we're trying to avail the services now, and advocacy is the most important thing. We need to teach the people there for them to be supportive. I've seen a few people that are trying to cope with it, but they're not actually coping with it. So some people, like someone that has been a victim of this from Sharawit moves to Addis. That doesn't mean you're coping with it. You're just running away from the problem. Not everybody could do that. So wherever they are, they need to they need to know how to live there. We need to help them to start living their lives wherever they are.
Right.
So that's very important. And we have different programs. So within our team, we have a few psychiatrists and psychologists as well. Right. The clinical work is not that difficult. So we have medical doctors and midwives that could also do that, and the facilities as well. So everybody that comes together to make sure that they can have a life after this.
Right. Are you able to go everywhere? Because I've heard that there's quite a few women as well in the countryside who are not able to come out to the nearest town even because of lack of transport and other stuff.
Yeah, we are not able to go everywhere. It's very difficult to go everywhere. But as I said, like from Debre Birhan to Kobo and some parts of Afar that we've traveled so far, and we're not planning on stopping anytime soon. So we're pleading for everybody to come work with us. So the more resources we have, the more professionals we have with us, then our reach will only grow.
Right. What do you want from people now to be able to give all the services that you're planning to give?
As I said earlier, one is resources, two is their capacity. Those are the two things that we need at this point. Someone that has the expertise, we'll be with open arms, welcome anybody that's willing to work with us in any way, because the country is for everyone and we need to build it together. And two is resources, financial and equipment-wise.
Seblewerk, can you also say something about I think we need to also educate the people, the community, to be able to understand what a women who've been affected by sexual abuse, how to deal with her, and not to be able to push her around, because we had a story, we've seen some women as well, we had a story where women can't talk about it, and at one point some of them have got husbands who won't be able to take it easily.
Yeah, I think, I work, my professional work in Australia is I work in the domestic family violence space. I work very closely with the sexual violence unit in Queensland where I live. It's very different than here, but I had some few clients who been abused in Syria and as a part in war area, because in war affected area, just similar kind of situation happened. We have the very wraparound programs, as he said, psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, and well-being centers and stuff. We work together. Even that, it takes really long time to recover. Sometimes the pain always there, and we actually help women to cope, to accept that pain. But just live. How do you live with it? And one of the recovery which we are always believe in sexual violence space is men have to evolve, genuine, because this violence happened by men. So men are also part of the process of healing, and good gesture and being there. Again, it's not easy because it's very early stage. And again, we have to add on also the cultural, the concept, the norms in around. We need to educate our community, our people, Ethiopians, even the region where that effect happened, where women lived. So first understanding them, what is the culture, the norms in that area, and then develop some program which can bring first the community to be helpful. And then in that process, men are the key players in the processing. And I think I want to highlight also in Waldia, we had some, women who was been young women, very young women, a girl, I think young girl, who has been bleeding and didn't get any medical attention until our team, we've been directly talking to, that's it. Since they left, even no one is actually there to help. Or there is no medical support in the Waldia area to go and get that direct physical injury to be healed, because there's no facility, because there is no mobile kind of response team just specifically for gender-based violence or sexual violence. So we need, I think, you already mentioned, but I think we need more expertise. Yes, psychologists, psychiatrists, but we need also social worker. I don't think that is very known in here.
It is. I mean, there's
quite
yeah. So
but not as
when
big
I was
as we
in
need
here,
it.
yeah. So, but we need, because social workers always work on the base of the community and a more social side of the problem. So that wraparound service is important for those who are affecting directly, because medical is one thing, but there is a psychological pain. And again, to talk, because as you know, our community, we like being included in a community. So the shame, women who are already victim, they feel they hate their body, they hate themselves, because that's why the men who doing this try to destroy the woman, to hate herself. So starting liking herself, it's not her problem. It's the problem is also the abuser. So differentiating that is important, but we need that very area-based, localized kind of support. So I think we, like us, as the people who have expertise, especially war-related kind of social work, like social support, or a psychiatrist, if there are, need to be mobilized quickly and also educate the community. Because at the end of the day, the women, as he mentioned, run away from Debre Berhan or from Aye or Wallo and coming in Addis, it doesn't actually help you, because it's always you feel it, and that dirtiness which they try to impose on you. So it's important the community to come together, helping these women, and when there is acceptance, the healing process will start. But it's a long way. Sometimes some women never been recovered, but they learn how to cope with it. So that's something we need to be really need mobilized, because again, this happened in a very far away, especially if you go to the north. It's some parts are really hard to access the roads. Right. So, and the expertise, maybe it's hard for them to get there, but we need to start something, working with the church. I know church and mosques these are the place normally people heal, and it's important educating maybe, the church people, and educate the educator kind of programs need to be.
Or mosque,
and all mosques. So we have to use our traditional methods for response for this kind of crisis, because the problem is everywhere. And another thing which in my lifetime, I have never heard this kind of big and destroying every part of our social fabric. So everyone is a victim, by the way, not in sexual violence, but the war actually affects everyone, from depriving food to being sexually violent and directly injured by the gun or the bomb. So it is a big thing. We need, I'm glad there is a research team happening, but I think the social side also need to come together, and what happened in the past. I don't think this level happened. So we need expertise and research parallelly actually helping those who are affected.
Well, just talking about the health centers, most hospitals, I would say, or health centers, especially in the countryside, although we built some, I think some of them are being built by foreign organizations, aid, like charity organizations, NGOs from some other countries. So we weren't even able to build them by ourselves. So we can't rebuild them again by ourselves. So is there not any other organizations in the world out there try to help out there? You also work in the Ministry of Health. Is there any support coming from the international organization?
Yes, in bits and pieces. Yes, organizations, international NGOs have started to help. But as you know, the diplomacy and our relation with the West has not been the best for the past few months, to say. So they have been helpful so far, prior to the war, to be specific. But now, not as much, but we hope some are actually helping. We can't say all of them are not helping, but we hope going forward, most of them will actually understand the truth on the ground and start helping for the sake of the people.
Right, I hope they will come forward to help some other places as well. Well, Seblewerk Tadese from Australia, a human rights community organizer, and Dr. Natnael from Gabi, Ethiopia, thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you as well.